Welcome back. Now we're going to be looking today at a beginner's design. This set of videos that are released on a Tuesday are aimed more at beginners, and we're looking at the very basic geometric shapes. I started this set of lessons with a line arrangement, and we're going to continue what we learned in that first lesson to create an L-shape arrangement. Now an L-shape, a line and a very basic crescent all come from the line arrangements rather than a massed design. So the two are very different and follow different guidelines. Line arrangements are very simple, quite stylized, and use a minimal selection of flowers and foliage. And a mass design, pretty much says in the description, is a design that has a lot more flowers in it. So if you're doing anything that's a line arrangement, really consider keeping your flowers to a minimal quantity and a minimal selection. Don't overfill it and try to put too much in. I'm sticking today to a cerise colour rose, and it's a supermarket rose. When I started the channel, I said I would use supermarket flowers, garden flowers and garden foliage to try and encourage lots of people to arrange flowers rather than restrict it to only buying from a florist. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then you really do need to do it. There are generally 2 or 3 videos a week. A full tutorial on a Sunday, a beginner's guide on a Tuesday, and then we've got a chatty video on a Thursday where I mainly give feedback on your arrangements. It's an exciting channel to belong to. I'm a florist, I'm also a qualified teacher, so I do tend to give quite a lot of theory and I do talk quite a lot. If you don't like it, zoom on past until you get to the point where I start actually adding flowers in. But if you learn the background information, it's what we call underpinning knowledge, then that will help you create designs from this very basic arrangement up to a large grand pedestal that you might want to be doing in your local church. The first design I did in the Back to Basics series was a line arrangement, and I used a raised container for that one. But because we're coming off on one side and the design can sometimes be a bit unstable, I'm going to use a flat container today. This is a florist's plastic see-through saucer, but you could use a plate at home, side plate, saucer, anything that's flat. If you're a bit more confident, then by all means raise it up off the table. But it's an L-shape arrangement, so if I just use these pieces of greenery, so the design looks like this. If it's in a raised container, I don't want this arm section, the side section, to be placed facing the ground. That really strong L shape, this is quite a formal design. If you're part of the younger generation that's coming into floristry now, you probably won't like these very geometric shapes, but they're important to learn. And I will keep on saying they're important to learn, even though I think I annoy the younger generation. Right, now I haven't used this floral foam before on the channel. This is the Biofoam Bioasis, and I'm not sponsored by any products. It's deemed a more environmentally friendly product, and I think sometimes seeing the word bio can be a little bit confusing because people assume that it's a biodegradable product, and it's not. It still needs to be put in landfill. It'll break down quicker, but it has to be in a biologically active landfill site, and not all councils have got it. I would suggest reading the information, picking up a leaflet on it so that you can educate yourself better. It's going to take me a long time otherwise to explain it on the channel. But I try to go through lots of different options for you if you don't want to use green floral foam, and just to educate you on what's available on the market. So let's get stuck into today's design. Now I'm going to be using just 1/3 of the block. So this is what the foam looks like. It's a browny, more natural colour. Hasn't got the same colour as the green foam. And I'm only going to use about 1/3 of a block. If I lift it up on the top here, you can see in the camera when I cut it. It's broken down into 3 sections, and I'm just going to use this 1/3. I haven't got a huge amount of flowers to go in this design, and I quite often say, think your mechanics through right at the very beginning. If you're only doing a small design, you don't need a huge piece of foam. There's nothing worse than getting to the end of your arrangement and you've got loads of foam showing, and you have to fill in to cover the foam, and then your design becomes quite messy. Alternatively, you can also go the opposite way and not have enough foam, so it's something you will improve on with practice. And what I've already thought about is that quite a lot of my foliage and flowers is going to be coming out at the side. So I would rather this wider piece of the foam be the side section rather than this narrow part here, because it's going to limit the amount of flowers that I can put in. So I'm going to turn my foam so that the wider part is going to be used for the side section, that bottom horizontal section of the L. And then I've still got plenty of room on the top to get my upright vertical line in. And I'm going to take my tape round. And today I'm doing it diagonally because it doesn't block up where I want that vertical line to come from. If you're a beginner, and for those of you that might be intermediates, always stick your tape to the plastic container and take it round and finish it on the top, stuck to the tape. Don't try and start by sticking it to the foam itself, and never leave it just attached on either side because it will work its way loose eventually. Sometimes if it's a wet container, it's china, or if it's going into a very warm location, that tape will work its way loose. So double it up and you know your arrangement's not going to fall apart. I like to start with the flowers first. Not everybody likes to do that. If you want to start with your foliage first, that's okay. What I sometimes find is that if I create the height first with my greenery, it's too long or too short for my flower choice. So I think getting your flowers in first is a really good way of creating the overall proportions to your arrangement. So let's go in with my single rose, and because it's a supermarket rose, I'm not going to be able to go much taller than this. And what I've aimed to do is to go into the foam, not quite all the way back because I've got greenery to go behind there, but I'm off centre. If I just draw a line down the middle here. So I'm slightly off centre because an L shape isn't symmetrical. If it was a symmetrical design, I would start in the middle. And my L shape is coming to my right because that's probably the easiest way for a right-handed person to work. And what I've hopefully achieved is using my smaller flower at the top and on the side here, so that your eye rhythmically moves from the smaller flower on the outside to the bigger flower in the middle. I only have a supermarket rose, so there's a possibility that all of them are going to be the same size, but I can't do anything about that. So that now forms my really clear L. Hopefully we've got a strong right angle and then my horizontal line coming out to one side. And I've left a bit of a gap underneath to put my foliage underneath, because your foliage doesn't want to go on top of your flowers. It needs to tuck in underneath to make a really seamless line. And my rose is slightly in front of this main flower here. If I was doing a bigger version of this with more flowers, I would probably bring this rose back more to give me more room at the front for more flowers. But I only have 8 flowers. So I'm going to bring 5 down that centre line. Remove any petals if you feel that they are damaged. And I'm going to work the design down just like I did in that first arrangement where I used gerbera. So pink gerbera, the principle for this design is exactly the same. I've cut that 3 times now and I still haven't got the right length. And we're going to ease it into the foam a little bit further forward, so we've got a gap there in the middle that I can place my finger into. I've stepped it down and I'm hoping that the 5 roses that I've got left are going to come nicely down the front. And this is what in floristry we call a focal line. It's not always done in flower arranging, because in flower arranging it's more about arranging garden flowers and flowers of different varieties, different shapes and different sizes. But if you're on any type of flower arranging or floristry course, a line arrangement is the first thing that you will get taught. And I find it's much easier. So tip 1 today would be use a flat container, and tip 2 is going to be use all of the same type of flowers, so it's easier for you to distribute the colours and flowers. And then where my focal point lies is in this sort of area here. And then I'll be bringing 2 out on the side to meet this flower over here. And it's almost like joining the dots. I've got this very bouncy staggered line coming from the top flower. My flowers are really rhythmically moving back and forth, so it's more pleasing to look at than a very rigid focal line coming down where there's no movement and no gaps between the middle. Space them out. Give them their own space around them so that it looks like more of a natural design. And then I'm going to bring 2 out to meet this one over on the side. But remember, it's an L. We need to keep that clear outline. We don't want to fill it in this area with loads and loads of different greeneries and loads of different choices of flowers and different textures to confuse the design. And hopefully there you've got that nice clear outline. When you become a little bit more proficient, you'll be able to make a matching pair. They'll sit really nicely on either side of the altar, or you could sit them on the mantelpiece. They look fantastic at Christmas with some candles and some greenery in the middle, joining them together. Now we're going to reinforce that line with some greenery, and we're also going to fill in down low so that all the foam is completely covered. And what I'm going to do first is to bring a phormium leaf up at the back. Now this is what we would refer to as a line foliage, and what we would call very dynamic. It's a very strong dynamic line, and that's going to be used here at the back. I've left plenty of room in my foam to get that in at the back, and I've slightly heightened the design. Generally speaking, your foliage is the tallest piece of material that's in the design. It should always be in traditional design above the flowers. It's there to protect the flowers and to create the overall dimensions. And I'm just going to sit 2 alongside one another. It creates depth because it's pulling your eye backwards. And to add 2 smaller pieces there on the end, I'm going to break one of the phormium pieces into 2, because 2 of those on the edge I think is going to be too strong. It's almost going to make the horizontal line too visually heavy. So breaking that in 2 gives you a much smaller piece of greenery. That's still a little bit too long, and I can tuck that in underneath, just so it's helping to reinforce that lovely L shape that I've created. And I can't stress enough in floral design, get your outline in first. Once you're happy with your outline, then fill in the design. A lot of people work backwards and they start by adding lots of fussy greeneries and trying to cover that floral foam, and without thinking about the outline shape that they're creating. So I'm hoping now we've got that really clear L. What we don't want to do is add in greenery over here, because that becomes a mass design and that becomes an asymmetrical triangle. But what we can do is add a bit of extra texture here in the back, and this is Pittosporum. And this one came out of a mixed bunch from the supermarket, but you can quite easily grow Pittosporum in a UK garden. And then we've got a nice combination of texture and colour alongside one another. Now I am going to use, this is cotinus. I am going to use some cotinus down lower because I think it really complements the cerise rose. But what I'm not going to do is place a huge heavy piece of this at the back. The scale out of this material is really not in keeping with my small delicate rose. If I had a big florist grade rose or a lily, alstroemeria, something that was much bigger, then that would work really well. But it would be too overbearing there and very, very distracting. So I'm going to keep it to simple greeneries. I've got Pittosporum and I've also got some eucalyptus, and then I'm going to fill in with those darker leaves there to give me a bit of texture What I'm slightly concerned about is that the eucalyptus that I'm going to use in a minute is small, and so is my pittosporum. So I've got two small sort of fussy greeneries that need something to break them up. So what I'm going to start doing now is reinforcing that outline shape. The pittosporum, I've already cut some of the pieces down shorter because it speeds up the video a little bit. But I want the eye to pick up the pittosporum and then for it to follow out to the outside edge. I haven't yet started filling in the back of the arrangement. I'm just, for the beginning, filling in that front area, and I can finish off the back later. Now this design here needs to be quite a solid right angle. I don't want to add in really long pieces of eucalyptus on this side because it's going to spoil the shape. So instead, I need little small pieces of greenery, long enough so that they're going to cover my plastic dish, but short enough that they're not going to lose that shape that I'm trying to create. Now, if at the very beginning I had started my first line in the middle of the foam, it would have meant I would have had a lot of foam over this side to cover. So that's why I encourage you to start an asymmetrical design to one side in the foam. Then you're going to have less to cover and you won't lose that shape. If we look at it from the side, we've got profile. I've got that elevation of flowers out towards the front, and I haven't dipped that flower forward, which is a mistake lots of beginners make. They dip in at the front and put a flower in really low. And you will see in a minute that because the foliage is very similar, so it's a different colour, one is grey, one is green, but the size of the leaf is the same. It's small, it's what I tend to call bitty, so there isn't a contrast between the two, and that definitely makes the design very traditional when the material looks the same. It gives that very traditional look, and I feel that it would benefit from having a bolder material just in between to help give me some contrast. What I'm putting at the bottom, I'm also going to bring up towards the top of the arrangement so that the colour is brought all the way through, but I need to be really careful that I don't start filling in this area here, because that will cause you to lose that line effect that we're trying to create. And if you've not commented before, then leave us a little comment in the box. You can let us know what you dislike or what you like about the tutorials. You can make some suggestions for future arrangements. And I've got an amazing Facebook group called Sharon's Innovations Group. You can join me over on there if you want. And you can join a community of like-minded fellow flower arrangers. So I'm not quite finished covering in, but that will do for a minute while I continue the video. I haven't lost that L shape by overfilling in the middle. And what I'm now going to do, I'm going to use the bottom parts of the cotonettes. Now this is a garden plant material. It will grow really nicely in a UK garden. The common name is smoke bush. And what I'm going to do here is use the bushier parts of the plant tucked in really close there at the front. So it gives me a bit of a darker colour at the base, and that's called recession, making your eye come down to the bottom of the arrangement, creates depth and makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. It's also broken up that quite fussy texture of those two greeneries that I've used. And if need be, I can thin some out so that they're not too fat and not taking up too much space in my design. One shorter bit slightly higher up, I think, to bring some colour up to the top. And I think I'm pretty much done. I am going to move this one leaf to this side. I think it's going to strengthen the top of the vertical line by being placed to the left. It makes that L shape a little stronger. And I think that's worked quite well. I am this time going to add in some extra straight pieces of the phormium, and I'm going to loop them over here in the centre. I want to show you that the phormium leaves could be used in different ways other than just straight up in an arrangement. But I'm going to keep them at the focal area so that it helps to strengthen the focal area there at the bottom. You can't do this with all greenery, but the Formium 10X is quite flexible. You can do it with bare grass or steel grass. You might have some reeds growing in the garden, but it's just going to give me a different texture at the focal point and give me a little bit of interest and a contrast in shape and colour. So just 3 pieces there. You don't have to do this. This is just because I've got the Formium available. And it's given me some really lovely swirls there in the middle. And that's the design, the second design completed. Once you've learned this, we can then move on to filling in this area here to make an asymmetrical triangle. And then we can extend it on both sides to make a triangle. So by learning one basic line arrangement at the beginning, extending it on to that L shape, you've got the basics for most floral designs. I really love teaching the basic shapes because I think it gives you a very good grounding for any type of floral design. There are loads of videos on the channel aimed at different styles of arranging, continental, European, designs inspired from all around the world. Thank you as ever for joining me. I hope you've learned something new today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye for now.